Your superpower is what I call your leadership niche, and it's the coming together of three key elements. So first up, you want to know what your strengths are. And these might be your leadership strengths as well as your professional and technical strengths, your area of expertise. But having a really thriving and sustainable and successful career begins with knowing, what are you great at? And so listen for, what are you doing and what are you working on when people go out of their way to thank you and praise you for a job well done? And what are the strengths and talents and skills that you own today, or the ones you know you could really own if you were to focus on developing those? So what are your current or your future potential strengths? So firstly, understanding your leadership niche, your number one superpower, is about recognizing those strengths. Next up, what are your passions? So what are the things you love to do? You know, when this stuff's on your to-do list for the day and you can't wait to come to work and have at it, what are you working on? What are, say, the areas of subject matter expertise that you could stay completely immersed in and focused on for the rest of your career and never get bored? Those are your passions. What lights you up and fires you up and inspires you? Right? So what do you just love to do? Now, I think we all know to do this. We all know that it's good to have a career based on our strengths and our passions. However, if we base our career around just those two elements, there's a very real danger here that you don't build a thriving and sustainable and successful career. You might instead just have an expensive hobby. And we all know a friend who's trying to make that work, and it's not a career. So I don't want that for you. You probably don't want that for you. And that's where the final area comes into play. So what is it that your organization or your market or customer base or industry as a whole really needs and wants and values, right? Because when you bring that into the equation, that's where you can build a remarkable career. When you align your strengths with your passions, with something you can deliver that would have you be really sought after. Now, here's a watch out. This final circle, what you have to offer that your organization values, you can't just look at that once in your career and hope to coast forward on it. Can you? No, because you're in an area that's constantly being disrupted. There's innovation, there's constant change going on. So you'll need to come back to this, you know, maybe every 6 months, every year, and just reflect on, has this moved, and do you need to move with the times and remain relevant? But here's what I want you to think through right now. What does this niche right here in the middle look like for you today? Are you in it? Are you doing work that plays to your strengths, that fuels your passions and fires you up and inspires you, something you love to do, that also has you be valued and sought after because you're fulfilling a really important need? Are you in your niche? If so, think through what that is. What do you do today that hits the target right in the middle? And if you're not in it, what would it need to look like in your very next step, your next career move, your next role, or the project that you raise your hand for? So what is your leadership niche right now, or what would you like it to be in your very next move? All right, everyone, go ahead and raise your hand if you're finding this exercise relatively easy. Maybe you knew yours already, or you figured it out just now. Raise your hand if this came relatively easy to you. Right, good to see. Yeah, we have some hands a little like this, maybe 70% or more. Sure. Raise your hand if this was difficult and you feel like you need more time. Like another 3 years, for example. Okay. Look, if you're not there yet, no worries. I mean, this is a tough one to figure out, but I would encourage you to make that your number one piece of homework to take away, because when you know what this is, you'll find a lot of other career questions or dilemmas or challenges start to resolve themselves. Like when you know your niche, you know which assignments or projects or even roles to go for and which ones to kind of diplomatically say, no, thank you. And you know what extra development steps you might take, skills to learn, certifications, etc. And you know who to seek out as your mentors and your supporters. So worth investing time to really define this. And if you want a guide to work through chapter 3 in the book, really does a deep dive. But for now, one of the best best ways to gain clarity is to talk it through with people. For those of you who are currently solo performers, your next step would be to figure this out for yourself. Once you know what this is, and especially if you're managing others, you can start to help people around you figure out what theirs is, and imagine the power of a team where everyone's operating in their superpower, their niche, but each person's niche is complementary. And for those of you who lead large organizations, you'll recognize this concept from Jim Collins's book, Good to Great. And of course, the goal is to have an entire organization all be hitting the target, right there in the middle.